After my husband died, I thought the hardest days of my life were behind me. But I was wrong. The real nightmare began when my own son, the boy I raised with love, turned against me. What you're about to hear is not just a story. It's a painful truth many people hide. Please stay with me till the end, because what I discovered will leave you in shock. And if you believe no one should ever suffer in silence, subscribe now so more people can hear stories like this one. I never thought the hands that once held mine so tenderly would one day become the same hands that hurt me. I was on the cold floor that night, my cheeks stinging from the slap my only son gave me. My heart pounded, not just from the pain but from the shock that this was my child. The same boy I carried in my womb. The one I nursed when he cried. The one his father had loved so deeply. Why, James? Why are you doing this to me? I whispered, but my voice was swallowed by his anger. He looked at me with eyes that no longer carried love, only bitterness. That was when I realized, after all these years, that my son had not been protecting me since his father's death. He had been abusing me, breaking me bit by bit, and I had been blind. My body trembled as I thought of all the years that passed since his father's death. The little signs I ignored. The way his voice grew sharper, his words colder. The way he controlled what I could or could not do in the house. First I thought it was grief. I told myself, he lost his father, he is just angry at life. I believed my son needed time. But time did not heal. Time made him cruel. Let me take you back to how it all began, before that night when his hand struck me, before my eyes opened to the truth. Maybe then, you will understand how a mother's love can blind her to danger, and how silence can turn into chains around her neck. The day his father died was the day everything changed. John, my husband, was a kind man. He was not rich, but he gave me peace. He loved James, his only son, with all his heart. James was only 17 then, a bright young boy who looked up to his father like a hero. On the day of the funeral, James stood by the coffin, his face stone cold. He did not cry. Not a single tear. I remember reaching out to hold his hand, but he pulled away. I thought it was shock. I thought he was being strong. But what I did not know was that my son's heart was already closing, turning into stone before my eyes. After the burial, our house grew quieter. I cooked, but no one ate much. I tried to talk to James, but he stayed in his room most times. At night, I could hear him pacing the floor. Sometimes he shouted at nobody, sometimes he banged the wall. I thought it was grief. I prayed it would pass. I was wrong. The first time James raised his voice at me, I was so shocked that I laughed nervously. It was about money. He had asked me for some, but I told him I needed to pay the light bill. He clenched his jaw and said, "If Dad were alive, we wouldn't be living like this. You don't know how to take care of me." My heart broke. I wanted to explain that things were hard, that I was trying, but the words stuck in my throat. I told myself he didn't mean it. He was just hurting. But the second time, it was worse. He threw a plate on the floor, because dinner was late. The sound of shattering glass rang in my ears long after. "Don't ever keep me waiting again," he yelled. I stood frozen, holding the spoon in my hand, too afraid to reply. After he stormed off, I sat in the kitchen and cried silently, blaming myself. Maybe I was failing him. Maybe I wasn't a good enough mother. The years rolled by, and I lived like a shadow in my own home. At first, the abuse was words. Then it was slamming doors. Then it was grabbing my wrist too hard. Little by little, he took away my freedom. I could not go out without telling him. I could not invite neighbors over. He checked my phone, my bags, even my purse. And like a fool, I thought he was being protective. I thought, this is just his way of making sure I am safe. How blind I was. One evening, I was humming while cleaning the living room. James came in furious. "Stop that noise," he shouted. I froze, cloth in hand. "It's just a song," I whispered. He stepped closer and grabbed the cloth from me, his eyes burning. I said stop. He pushed me back so hard I nearly fell. My heart was racing. This was no longer grief. This was something else, something dark. But here is where things turned worse. That night, James did not just push me. He raised his hand and slapped me across the face. The sound echoed through the room, and my ears rang. I stood there, trembling, touching my cheek, looking at him in disbelief. "You hit me." I whispered. For a moment his eyes softened. For a moment, I thought he would cry. But then, just like that, the softness vanished, and he turned away coldly. I lay in bed that night, tears soaking my pillow. I remembered the boy he once was, the way he used to laugh when his father played with him, the way he used to hug me tightly after school. Where did that boy go? What monster had he become? The next morning, I told myself it would never happen again. I promised myself it was just anger, just a mistake. But I was wrong. That slap was only the beginning of years of hidden torment. And I was about to learn the hard truth. Because 2 nights later, something happened that I could never forget. James came home late, his eyes red, his steps unsteady. He reeked of alcohol. I sat up waiting for him, but before I could speak, he grabbed me by the arm and pulled me close. "You think you can control me?" he hissed, his grip so tight I winced. His face was inches from mine, and I could feel his hot breath. My heart pounded, fear gripping me like a cage. For the first time, I realized my own son could destroy me. And then, James' grip on my arm was like iron. I could feel the heat of his anger burning through his skin. My heart raced as I tried to pull away, but he tightened his hold until my bones ached. "You think you can tell me what to do?" he hissed, his words slurred but sharp enough to pierce me. My throat went dry. This was not the boy I raised. This was someone else. Someone cruel. "James, please let me go," I whispered, tears forming in my eyes. For a moment, I thought he would hit me again. But then, as if he suddenly remembered I was his mother, he shoved me away and staggered toward his room. The door slammed so hard that the pictures on the wall rattled. I stood there trembling, clutching my arm where his fingers had dug into my skin. The bruise would show in the morning, but the wound inside my heart was already deep. That night I did not sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the shadows dancing across the wall. Memories flooded my mind. The little boy who once climbed into my lap, the boy who begged me to read bedtime stories, the boy who promised, "Mama, I will always take care of you." Where had that boy gone? The next morning, James acted as though nothing had happened. He came into the kitchen rubbing his eyes and asked, "What's for breakfast?" I stood there, shocked, spatula in my hand. Did he not remember? Or did he simply not care? My lips trembled as I forced a smile and said, "Pancakes." I told myself to stay quiet, to avoid his anger. Days passed like this. Sometimes James was calm, even gentle. He would sit beside me, talk about his day, or ask for advice about work. In those moments, I thought maybe my son was healing, maybe I was wrong to fear him. But then, like a storm, his mood would change. One wrong word, one mistake, and his temper would explode. One evening, I was folding his clothes when he came in. "Why are you touching my things?" he snapped. I froze, a shirt still in my hand. "I was just helping." Before I could finish, he snatched the shirt and threw it on the floor. "Don't touch my stuff." His voice shook the walls. I stood in silence, my hands trembling. That night, I cried myself to sleep again, my pillow wet with tears. The neighbors started to notice my silence. Mrs. Carter from across the street asked, "Are you all right, dear? You look tired." I forced a smile and said, "I'm fine." How could I tell her that the same son who people saw carrying my groceries was the same one hurting me behind closed doors? Who would believe me? One Sunday, after church, the pastor stopped me. "We don't see James much anymore," he said kindly. "Is he doing okay?" My lips trembled. I wanted to scream, "No, he is not okay. He is destroying me." But instead I smiled faintly and said, "He's busy with work." My silence was my prison. But silence does not stop abuse. Silence only feeds it. One evening, James came home late again. His face was twisted with anger. I had kept his food on the table, waiting for him. As soon as he saw it, he threw the plate to the floor. The food scattered across the tiles. "Do you think I want cold food?" he shouted. My hands shook as I bent to clean the mess. Suddenly, he kicked the plate across the room, the pieces cutting my hand. Pain shot through my palm as blood trickled down. "Look what you made me do," he barked, towering over me. My vision blurred with tears. My hand throbbed, but the pain in my heart was worse. How did my son become this? How did I not see it sooner? That night, I sat in the bathroom, cleaning my wound. As I looked at my reflection in the mirror, I saw a broken woman staring back. My hair messy, my eyes swollen, my spirit crushed. I asked myself, is this my life now? To live in fear of the boy I raised? But things were about to get worse. Much worse. The next morning, I gathered courage. I thought, maybe if I talk to him when he's calm, maybe if I remind him of his father, he will change. When he came into the living room, I sat beside him and said softly, James, your father would be so sad to see us like this. He loved you. He wanted you to be strong, not angry. The moment I mentioned his father, his eyes darkened. His fists clenched. My heart dropped. He stood up so fast the chair fell backward. Don't you dare mention him, he shouted. His voice thundered through the house. My whole body shook. Before I could move, he grabbed a glass from the table and smashed it against the wall. Shards scattered across the floor. I froze breathless, as he glared at me with a rage I had never seen before. And then he picked up one of the broken glass shards. His hand bled as he gripped it tightly. My heart stopped. Mama, he said slowly, his voice low and terrifying. If you ever mention Dad again, I swear you'll regret it. The shard was inches from his own skin. And mine. And at that moment, the shard of glass glistened under the dim light as James tightened his fist around it. Drops of blood ran down his hand, leaving a dark trail on the floor. My whole body trembled. My breath came in short gasps as I stared at my son. The boy I once rocked to sleep, now standing before me like a stranger. James, please, I whispered, my voice cracking. Put it down. You're hurting yourself. His lips curled into a bitter smile. Hurting myself? No, Mama. You're the one who hurts me. Every time you mention him, every time you talk about how good he was, you remind me of what I'll never be. His voice shook with rage and pain, a mixture that made him even more frightening. Slowly, I raised my hands, trying to calm him. James, your father loved you. He would never want you to live in anger. Please listen to me. For a moment, I thought my words might reach him. His eyes softened slightly, and the shard trembled in his hand. But then, with a sudden growl, he threw it to the ground, the glass shattering into even smaller pieces. He pushed past me, his shoulder hitting mine so hard that I stumbled. The slam of his bedroom door echoed through the house, leaving me standing there with my knees weak and my heart racing. I sank to the floor, breathing hard. I should have run. I should have told someone. But instead I sat there in silence, convincing myself that maybe it was just anger, that maybe he would change if I gave him time. That was the lie I told myself again and again. The next few days were calmer. James didn't shout. He didn't throw things. He acted like nothing had happened. At breakfast he even asked, "Do you want me to pick up groceries on my way back?" My heart swelled with false hope. I wanted to believe my son was still in there somewhere. I wanted to believe I hadn't lost him completely. But deep inside, a voice whispered, this peace will not last. And it didn't. One evening, I came home from the market carrying bags of food. James was waiting for me in the living room, his face expressionless. "Where were you?" he asked flatly. "At the market," I said softly, setting the bags on the table. "Who gave you permission to go?" His words cut into me like a blade. I stared at him, shocked. "Permission? James, I don't need permission to buy food." His eyes narrowed. He stood up slowly and walked toward me. "I told you never to leave the house without telling me." Fear washed over me. I had forgotten how he insisted on knowing my every move. I'm sorry, I stammered. I didn't think it was a problem. Before I could say more, he grabbed the bag and threw it across the room. Oranges rolled under the sofa, rice spilled onto the floor. "Do you ever listen?" he shouted. My whole body shook as I bent to pick up the mess, my tears falling onto the scattered grains. That night, I locked my bedroom door for the first time. My hands trembled as I turned the key. I sat on the edge of the bed, listening to his footsteps outside. Every creak of the floorboard made my heart pound harder. I wondered, am I living with my son, or my captor? But the nightmare wasn't done with me yet. A week later, something happened that made me realize just how much danger I was in. James came home drunk again. I was sitting quietly in the living room when he stormed in, his eyes bloodshot. He slammed the door behind him and staggered toward me. "Why do you always look at me like that?" he spat. "Like I'm some kind of monster." "I'm not." I began, but he cut me off. "Yes, you are. You think you're better than me. You think Dad loved you more than he loved me." His words pierced me. "James, that's not true. He loved us both." But James wasn't listening. He grabbed the lamp from the table and hurled it against the wall. The crash shook the house, shards of glass flying everywhere. I screamed, covering my face as pieces landed near me. And then he stepped closer, his hand reaching for me. His fingers wrapped around my neck. For the first time, I felt the true weight of his rage. His grip tightened, cutting off my breath. My vision blurred as tears streamed down my face. I clawed at his hand, gasping, my chest burning for air. "James," I croaked. "Please. I'm your mother." But his eyes were empty, filled with nothing but pain and fury. I thought that was the end. I thought my own son was about to kill me. And just as the room began to fade into darkness, my lungs burned as James' fingers tightened around my throat. The world dimmed, and a ringing filled my ears. I scratched at his hands, desperate for air. My legs kicked weakly, my strength slipping away. I thought this was how I would die. In my own living room, at the hands of the son I had carried for 9 months and loved for years. But then, as quickly as it started, he released me. I collapsed onto the floor, coughing violently, air rushing back into my chest like fire. My throat throbbed, every breath painful. Tears blurred my vision as I looked up at him. For the first time, I saw something flicker in his eyes: guilt. "Mama," he whispered, his voice trembling. He took a step back, his chest heaving. His bloody knuckles shook as he ran his hands through his hair. "I didn't mean. I don't know what came over me." I tried to speak, but my throat was raw. My voice came out hoarse. "James, you almost killed me." His face twisted, and he turned away, slamming his fist into the wall. "Don't say that. Don't make me feel worse." I curled into myself on the floor, fear and confusion swirling inside me. Part of me wanted to reach for him, to comfort him, to believe he was still my son. Another part of me wanted to run, to never look back. But where could I go? This was my home. He was my child. The next morning, he acted as though nothing had happened. He came into the kitchen, his voice soft. "Mama, I'm sorry about last night. I've been under a lot of pressure." I stared at him, my throat still aching from his grip. He placed a plate of eggs in front of me, smiling faintly as if nothing was wrong. And like a fool, I forced myself to smile back. Because that's what mothers do, we forgive. Even when the wound is still bleeding, we forgive. Days turned into weeks. Sometimes James was gentle, even kind. He brought me flowers one afternoon, saying, "I saw these and thought of you." I held them close, my heart aching with hope. Maybe he was changing. Maybe he was healing. But hope is dangerous. Hope blinds you to the truth. One evening, I was sweeping the kitchen when James stormed in. His face was dark, his jaw clenched. "Who were you talking to outside?" I froze, broom in hand. "Mrs. Carter," I said softly. "She asked about the weather." His eyes narrowed. "Don't lie to me." "I'm not lying, James. She just..." Before I could finish, he snatched the broom from my hand and snapped it over his knee. The crack echoed through the room. "I told you not to talk to anyone without me around." Tears filled my eyes. "James, she's just a neighbor. Please, you're scaring me." His face twisted, and he slammed his fist onto the table, making the dishes rattle. "I'm protecting you. Don't you see? The world is full of liars. People will turn you against me." His voice was so loud, so desperate, that for a moment I almost believed him. Almost. That night I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The bruises on my arms were fading, but the fear inside me grew stronger. I thought about running away, but then I imagined James finding me, dragging me back, punishing me worse than before. The walls of my house felt like a cage, and I was the prisoner. But then something happened that shook me to my core. It was a Sunday morning. I was in the living room folding clothes when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned expecting James. But it wasn't him. It was Mrs. Carter. She had let herself in through the back door, holding a basket of muffins. "Good morning, dear," she said cheerfully. "I baked these for you." My eyes widened in panic. "You shouldn't be here," I whispered urgently. Before I could explain, James walked in. His face went pale when he saw her. For a moment the air stood still. Then like thunder his rage exploded. "What are you doing in my house?" he roared. Mrs. Carter jumped, startled. I just came to bring some muffins." "Get out!" James shouted, stepping toward her. His voice shook the walls, his fists clenched. I rushed forward, my heart racing. "James, stop. She didn't mean any harm." But James' eyes burned with fury. He grabbed the basket from Mrs. Carter's hands and hurled it against the wall, muffins scattering across the floor. "I said get out." Mrs. Carter's face turned pale with fear. She stumbled back toward the door. I tried to calm James, grabbing his arm, but he shoved me so hard I fell against the table. My shoulder slammed into the edge, sending pain shooting through me. Mrs. Carter gasped. "My God, James!" And then James turned to her, his fists shaking, his chest rising and falling like a storm ready to break. He took a step toward her, his voice low and dangerous. "You don't belong here. If I ever catch you near my mother again." He stopped, his teeth gritted, his eyes like fire. Mrs. Carter froze, staring at him in shock. And in that moment, James' chest heaved, his fists trembling as he glared at Mrs. Carter. "If I ever catch you near my mother again, I swear you'll regret it." His voice was low, steady, but more terrifying than if he had shouted. Mrs. Carter's lips quivered. She glanced at me, still on the floor, my shoulder aching from the fall. Her eyes filled with tears. This isn't right," she whispered. "Out!" James roared, stepping closer. Mrs. Carter scrambled toward the door, fumbling with the knob. She shot me one last look, her face filled with pity and fear, before she fled into the sunlight. The door slammed shut, and silence filled the house again. James stood there, breathing heavily, his fists still clenched. Then slowly he turned to me. His eyes were wild. "Why did you let her in?" he demanded. I didn't," I stammered, still trembling. "She just came to bring muffins." "Liar." His voice thundered, and he stormed toward me. I crawled back against the wall, my body shaking. He towered over me, his shadow swallowing mine. For a moment I thought he would strike me again. But instead he slammed his fist against the wall just above my head, the impact rattling the frame of the picture hanging there. My heart leapt into my throat. "I told you," he hissed through gritted teeth. "Nobody comes near you. Nobody." That night, the house felt colder than ever. I sat on my bed, clutching my bruised shoulder, tears spilling down my cheeks. My mind screamed at me to run, to tell someone, to break the silence. But my heart whispered, "He's my son. If I expose him, I'll lose him forever." The days that followed were unbearable. James grew more controlling, more paranoid. He began locking the doors when he left, keeping the keys in his pocket. He checked my phone, demanded to know who called, and sometimes even tore up letters that came for me. I was no longer a mother in my own home. I was a prisoner. And yet I kept quiet. Until one evening, I heard a knock on the door. James wasn't home yet. My heart raced as I hesitated, wondering if I should open it. Slowly I turned the knob. It was Mrs. Carter. Her face was pale, her hands trembling as she held a small envelope. "I couldn't sleep," she whispered. "I keep hearing your cries in my head. Please take this. It's my number. Call me anytime, day or night." Tears welled in my eyes. I wanted to hug her, to tell her everything. But before I could speak, the sound of a car engine roared outside. My blood ran cold. James was home. Mrs. Carter's eyes widened. She shoved the paper into my hand. "Hide it," she whispered urgently. Then she slipped out the back door just as James entered. "Who were you talking to?" he asked immediately, his eyes scanning the room. "No one," I lied quickly, shoving the paper into my pocket. My hands shook as I tried to steady my breathing. James narrowed his eyes, stepping closer. "You're hiding something." "No, James. I was just praying." My voice cracked. For a long moment he stared at me, his eyes dark and searching. Then, without warning, he snatched my wrist and pulled me closer. If I ever find out you've been talking to her again, he whispered coldly, you'll regret it more than anything. My stomach dropped. His grip was so tight I thought my wrist would snap. And then, he reached into my pocket. My breath caught as James' fingers brushed against the paper hidden in my pocket. My heart hammered like a drum. This is it, I thought. If he finds the note, it's over. But before he could pull it out, his phone rang. He froze, then released me abruptly. He snatched the phone from his pocket, glancing at the screen. With a grunt, he answered and turned away. Yeah? What is it? His voice grew distant as he walked into the other room. I stood frozen, clutching my wrist, my mind racing. Quickly, I slipped the paper from my pocket and shoved it into the lining of my shoe. My hand shook so badly I could barely breathe. When James returned, his face was grim. I have to go out, he muttered, grabbing his keys. His eyes narrowed at me before he left. Don't leave this house. Don't even step outside. The door slammed behind him. Silence filled the room. My chest rose and fell rapidly as I collapsed onto a chair. Clutching my face, I pulled off my shoe, retrieved the note, and read it. Mrs. Carter's handwriting was shaky but clear. You are not alone. Please let me help you. For the first time in years, a flicker of hope lit inside me. Someone knew. Someone cared. But hope is dangerous. That night, James returned later than usual, the smell of alcohol heavy on his clothes. His eyes were bloodshot, his steps unsteady. He looked at me with suspicion. What did you do while I was gone? I cleaned, I said softly. He leaned closer, his face inches from mine. You didn't call anyone? No, my voice trembled. He stared at me for a long, terrifying moment. Then he laughed, a cold, bitter laugh. Good. Because if you ever betray me, Mama, I'll make sure you never see the light of day again. My blood ran cold. The next morning, I tried to act normal. I cooked breakfast, folded clothes, pretended everything was fine. But inside, I was breaking. I couldn't live like this anymore. I had to make a choice, stay silent and die slowly, or risk everything and cry for help. That afternoon, while James was asleep, I crept into the kitchen. My hands shook as I picked up the phone. I dialed the number on the note with trembling fingers. Hello. Mrs. Carter's gentle voice answered. Tears streamed down my face. It's me, I whispered. Please help me. But before she could reply, a shadow fell across the wall. I turned slowly, my heart stopping. James was standing in the doorway. His eyes were blazing, his fists clenched. And in his hand was the phone cord he had just yanked from the wall. The silence between us was louder than thunder. James stood in the doorway, the phone cord dangling from his hand like a noose. His chest rose and fell, his eyes locked on me. I couldn't breathe. Who were you calling? His voice was low, controlled, but dripping with danger. I swallowed hard, my lips trembling. I was trying to call the bakery. I thought we were out of bread. James stepped closer, the cord dragging on the floor behind him. Don't lie to me, Mama. I heard her voice. I heard Mrs. Carter. My legs turned weak. I gripped the edge of the counter to keep myself from collapsing. She just wanted to help. Help. His voice cracked like a whip. He slammed the phone against the wall, shattering it into pieces. The crash made me flinch. Do you think anyone can help you? Do you think anyone cares? Tears spilled down my cheeks. You don't have to do this, James. You're my son. I love you. Love. His laugh was bitter, sharp. You say you love me, but you let him die. I froze. The words pierced me like a knife. What are you saying? His jaw clenched, his eyes blazing. Father died because of you. You let him waste away, and now you want to run to strangers? You belong to me now, Mama. Only me. He grabbed my arm, pulling me so close I could feel his hot breath against my skin. You will never betray me again. That night, James locked me inside my bedroom. I heard the click of the key turning in the door, followed by his heavy footsteps fading down the hallway. I sat in the darkness, my body shaking. My son, the boy I once held in my arms, sang lullabies to kiss goodnight, had turned into my captor. The days blurred together. He brought me food at odd hours, never letting me leave the room unless he was there. Sometimes he sat by the door, whispering things I didn't understand. Other times he paced the hall like a restless beast. But even in that prison my mind raced. His words haunted me, "You let him die." What did he mean? I had cared for my husband until his last breath. I stayed by his side in sickness, prayed over him, begged God to heal him. Why would James blame me? Then one night as I lay awake, I heard James speaking to himself in the kitchen. His voice was muffled, but the words made my blood run cold. "She'll never leave me. She can't. Not after what she did." I pressed my ear against the door, straining to hear more. But before I could catch another word, the floor creaked outside my room. His shadow darkened the gap beneath the door. My heart pounded as I scrambled back into bed, pretending to sleep. The knob rattled. Slowly the door opened. James stood there, holding something shiny in his hand. The blade of the kitchen knife glimmered in the dim light. James stepped into the room, his face blank, his eyes unreadable. "James," I whispered, my throat dry. "What are you doing?" He said nothing. He walked closer, the knife dangling casually at his side. My body trembled as I pressed myself against the headboard, my pulse racing. Finally he spoke. "I was dreaming about Father," he said softly. "Do you remember how weak he looked at the end? How he begged for water, and you just sat there?" Tears filled my eyes. "That's not true, James. I cared for him. You know I did." But James shook his head, a dark smile curling on his lips. "No. You let him die. And now, maybe it's your turn to feel what he felt." He raised the knife. A scream tore from my throat as I grabbed the nearest object, a pillow, and threw it at him. He stumbled, the knife slipping from his hand and clattering to the floor. I lunged for it, but he was faster. He shoved me back onto the bed, his hands gripping my shoulders like iron. "Don't fight me, Mama," he hissed. "You'll only make it worse." I sobbed, my heart shattering into pieces. "Why are you doing this? I'm your mother." For a moment, his expression flickered. His grip loosened just slightly. He looked down at me, his eyes filled with something strange, pain maybe, or confusion. But then, as quickly as it came, it vanished. His face hardened again. "You'll understand soon," he whispered. "The truth will come out." Before I could respond, he pressed the knife against the mattress beside my head, the blade slicing into the fabric. My whole body went rigid. And then, from outside the house, a loud knock on the front door echoed through the halls. James froze. His eyes darted toward the sound, then back at me. His face twisted with rage. "If you make a sound," he whispered, pressing the blade deeper into the mattress, "I'll finish what I started." The knocking grew louder. A voice called out, "Mrs. Thompson? It's Pastor John. Are you home?" Hope and terror surged through me all at once. James' face darkened. He lifted the knife again. The knife trembled in James' hand as the knock came again. Pastor John's voice carried through the door. "Mrs. Thompson? I brought you some groceries. I haven't seen you in church for weeks. Are you all right?" My heart leapt into my throat. My mouth opened, desperate to call out, but James' eyes locked onto mine, cold and sharp. He shook his head slowly, pressing the knife against my arm. The message was clear, one sound and he would strike. I swallowed my cry. Tears streamed down my face as Pastor John called again. James whispered, his lips barely moving. "He can't know. If he finds out, everything will be ruined." The knock grew louder. "Mrs. Thompson, I know you're in there. Please open up." James' grip faltered. His breathing grew heavy, uneven. He looked at the door, then back at me. His jaw clenched. "I can't let him take you away from me. Not like Father." The words sent a shiver down my spine. "James, what do you mean?" I whispered. His eyes darted wildly. For the first time, he looked like a frightened child instead of a monster. His voice cracked. "He was leaving us, Mama. He said he couldn't stay anymore. He said he didn't love you." I froze. My husband? The man I had loved and cared for until his last breath? James' hands shook as he continued. He was going to run away. With someone else. I heard him that night. He was packing a bag. My heart pounded. "James, what did you do?" He stared at the floor, his chest heaving. "I couldn't let him leave us. So I made sure he never could." The room spun. My knees went weak. The truth hit me like a storm. I hadn't failed my husband. I hadn't let him die. James. James had killed his own father. The pounding on the door grew frantic. Mrs. Thompson. James. Are you okay? James snapped his head toward the sound, rage flashing across his face. He grabbed my wrist, yanking me toward the back door. We have to go. Now. I struggled, my voice breaking. James, stop. Please let me go. But he dragged me across the floor, the knife still clutched in his fist. My screams filled the house as Pastor John finally forced the door open. Dear God, Pastor John shouted, rushing inside. James spun around, pulling me close, the knife pressed to my throat. His eyes were wild. Stay back, Pastor. Stay back or she dies. Pastor John froze, his hands raised in the air. James, put the knife down, son. You don't want to do this. James' grip tightened around me, his voice shaking. You don't understand. She's all I have left. She's mine. I sobbed, my voice trembling. James, please. I'm your mother. I'll always love you. But this isn't love. This is killing us both. For a moment his face softened. The boy I once knew flickered behind his broken eyes. But then he shook his head violently, pressing the blade harder against my skin. No. If I let you go, you'll leave me. Just like he did. Pastor John took a cautious step forward. James, your father didn't leave. You left him forever. Carrying that secret has poisoned you. But it's not too late to stop. James' body shook. His breath came in ragged gasps. I didn't mean to. I just wanted him to stay. I wanted us to be a family. The knife slipped slightly from my throat as his grip wavered. Summoning all my strength, I turned and looked him straight in the eye. James, listen to me. I forgive you. But if you kill me now, you'll never escape the darkness. Please, son, don't let hate win. For a long moment, silence hung heavy in the room. His chest rose and fell, his eyes darting between me and Pastor John. Finally, his hand trembled, and the knife clattered to the floor. I fell into Pastor John's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. James dropped to his knees, burying his face in his hands. I'm sorry, Mama. I'm so sorry. The sirens wailed in the distance. Pastor John had already called the police. Within minutes, officers rushed in, pulling James away despite his cries. My heart shattered as I watched my son dragged out of the home we once shared. I sat on the floor, broken but alive. The truth was devastating. My husband had not abandoned me. My son had carried a secret so heavy it turned him into something I could hardly recognize. But in that pain came a lesson. Sometimes the ones we love most carry wounds we cannot see. Silence only feeds the darkness. If I had spoken out, if I had sought help sooner, maybe things would have been different. As the door closed behind James, I looked at Pastor John through tear-filled eyes. I should have realized sooner, I whispered. I should have listened. He placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. It's never too late to tell the truth, sister. And it's never too late to heal. That day, I vowed never again to hide my pain. Never again to suffer in silence. Because love isn't blind obedience. Real love is truth, even when it hurts. Life lesson. Silence can be dangerous. Hiding pain and secrets only gives them more power to destroy. True love does not live in fear, and family should never be a prison. If you are suffering abuse, whether from a stranger or someone you love, speak out, seek help, and never believe that staying quiet is the only way to survive. Courage and truth are the first steps to freedom. Silence almost cost me my life. I learned that love is not fear, and family is not meant to hurt you. If this story touched you, please share your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear from you. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe, because more true grandma stories are coming, and each one carries a lesson that can change lives.